In this video, we'll be looking at 5.3, the other trig functions. What we mean by the other trig functions is secant, cosecant, tangent, and cotangent. In the previous section, we discussed sine and cosine. The other function we have a lot of experience with is tangent. In this section, we will be talking about, in addition to tangent, the reciprocal functions. Remember, a reciprocal is a flipped over fraction. The reciprocal function to sine x will be cosecant x. That is, sine x is equal to 1 over cosecant. That is, sine x is equal to 1 over cosecant of x. The reciprocal function to cosine is secant. That is, cosine is 1 over secant. The reciprocal to tangent is cotangent. That is, tangent is 1 over cotangent. Let's investigate this a little closer. We know that sine x, sine, is equal to opposite over the hypotenuse. Well, cosecant, I'll spell it out, C-O-S-E-C-A-N-T, abbreviated CSC. Cosecant is the reciprocal of that. Just flip it over. It's going to be hypotenuse over the opposite side. So let's see how we'll use the unit circle to answer some problems related to these other functions. So let's say we want to find the cosine of a 30-degree angle. Well, we know cosine is x, so we're just going to come to our unit circle and identify the x coordinate. It's square root of 3 over 2. That is the cosine. Cosine is x, and certainly we could write x over 1. Well, the reciprocal to cosine is secant. They're reciprocal functions. Thus, secant is simply flip that fraction over. So secant is going to be 1 over x. So we're simply going to flip over that fraction. Where it is square root of 3 over 2, we will now write 2 over the square root of 3. We won't leave the denominator with a square root. We'll rationalize the denominator, multiplying by square root of 3 over 3. Square root of 3 times square root of 3 is 3, and 2 times square root of 3, we just tack them together. So secant of a 30 is 2 square roots of 3 over 3. Next, we'll talk about this idea of cofunctions. This prefix co in cofunctions is short for complementary. Recall from geometry, two angles are complementary if they sum to 90 degrees. Our other big term was supplementary. That's two angles that sum to 180. So cofunctions will have the same value if indeed their angles sum to 90. That is, cosine of a 50 will be the same as sine of a 40-degree angle. They're referring to the same angle. Cosecant of an 80-degree angle will be the same as secant of a 10. 80 plus 10 is 90. 50 and 40, 90. Co-functions, complementary. Cotangent of some angle x will be equal to the tangent of 90 minus that angle. So let's look at some example problems. Beginning with number 6. We're looking for tangent of pi over 6. Recall that tangent is the opposite over the adjacent. Looking back at our unit circle, if we draw some angle here, in this case our 30-degree angle, it doesn't matter what the degree is. You can see the opposite side to the angle is y, and the adjacent side is x. So tangent is y over x. So we're looking at a 30-degree angle, and we want y divided by x. So in this case, that's going to be 1/2 divided by the square root of 3 over 2. 1/2 divided by square root of 3 over 2. Y divided by x. Remember, when we divide fractions, we multiply by the reciprocal. So this is 1/2 times flipping over the bottom fraction. leave square root of 2 over 3. The 2's cancel to leave 1 over the square root of 3. So y over x is 1 over the square root of 3. Note that's just the numerators. So to find tangent, you simply look at the numerators, y divided by x. So tangent of pi sixth will be 1 divided by square root of 3. Again, we won't leave the square root in the bottom. We'll need to rationalize the denominator. Let's multiply by the square root of 3 over square root of 3. That's just 1, so we're not changing any values. We're just changing the way it looks. 1 times the square root of 3 is the square root of 3. And square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is 3. So tangent of pi sixth is square root of 3 over 3. Square root of 3 over 3. So our assignment here is 6 through 72 multiples of 3. That's 6, 9, 12, so forth. Let's do one more from this first group. Let's look at number 11, secant of pi fourths. All right, we want to look at secant of pi fourths. Recall that secant is the reciprocal function of cosine. Secant and cosine match up, perhaps opposite of how you would think. Cosecant and sine are the reciprocal functions. So secant is 1 over cosine. I should put the pi fourths in here as well, but I'm just keying on what we're dealing with here. And cosine is x. So 1 over x. Secant will be 1 over x. All right, back to our unit circle. We're looking for pi fourths. Pi fourths is same as 45 degrees. We're talking about x. X is the square root of 2 over 2, but we want 1 over that. We want the reciprocal. That's going to be 2 over the square root of 2. So secant of pi fourths is 2 over the square root of 2. Again, we won't leave the square root in the denominator. That's an irrational number. We will rationalize the denominator, multiplying by the square root of 2 over 2. Square root of 2 over the square root of 2. A square root times itself comes out. Square root of 2 times square root of 2 is 2. And then 2 times the square root of 2 in the numerator. Secant of pi fourths is 2 square roots of 2 over 2. 12, so forth. So let's look at one from this next section, using reference angles to evaluate an expression. Let's take a look at number 19, secant of 7 pi over 6. Back to our unit circle. Here we find 7 pi over 6. It's the same as a 210 degree angle. So that 210 degree angle is a little more than halfway around the circle. That is the 210 degree angle. Should have drawn it in the other direction, but that's 210 degree angle. The reference angle is the angle between the terminal side and the x-axis. The reference angle is this one right here. And this angle is a 30 degree angle. This angle is the same as this one. And they are both 30 degrees. So secant of 7 pi over 6 and we know secant is 1 over cosine, and cosine is x. Cosine is x. X before y, cosine before sine. And we know these two angles are the same. This angle is 30 degrees and that angle is 30 degrees. This y distance and this x distance are the same. That's why you see these two coordinates are the same except for the signs. Remember, when we go 180 degrees around the circle, the absolute value will be the same, but the signs will be exactly the opposite. So secant of a 7 pi over 6 will behave exactly the same as negative secant of pi divided by 6. That's what we mean by the reference angle. So we know it's going to be simply the inverse of the x coordinate, in this case, 2 over the square root of 3, but it's going to be negative. And we could have gotten that immediately just by looking at the 210. Again, we need to rationalize the denominator, so we'll multiply by the square root of 3 over the square root of 3. The square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is 3. 2 times the square root of 3 in the numerator. Don't forget the negation.